Hello, this is Lecture 9, Dharma Meets Advanced Neuroscience. Albert Einstein said Buddhism is the religion of the future because it will best cope with scientific needs. Will it deal equally well with advanced psychopharmacology? Science and Buddhism are very similar, said His Holiness the Dalai Lama, because they are exploring the nature of reality and both have the goal to lessen the suffering of mankind. The Dalai Lama and most Buddhist teachers have been very welcoming of scientists seeking to learn more about the physiological and psychological states that ensue in meditation. Scientists are especially interested in the effects of long-term Buddhist practice on the brain. Fred Gage, a neuroscientist at the Salk Institute, once asked the Dalai Lama, "What if neuroscience comes up with information that directly contradicts Buddhist philosophy?" His Holiness laughed and replied, "Then we would have to change the philosophy to match the science." So far, that hasn't been necessary. Science is more turned on than ever to the efficacy of altered states of consciousness as a mechanism for lessening human suffering. Ever since 1952, when Hans Eyck admitted psychotherapy was no more beneficial for patients than the mere passage of time, the business of helping people suffer less has become increasingly medicalized. Psychopharmacology in the age of Prozac made dramatic progress with many mental and emotional problems, but it comes with serious baggage after continual use. Physical and neurological side effects, both intermediate and long-term. Finally, the scientific community is taking a real interest in other ways of altering states that can produce more reliable and profound changes with less medicine. A science of spirituality is emerging, which is looking into the powers of both sustained meditation and plant psychedelics. A central insight of the Buddha, also directly realized by generations of meditation practitioners and users of entheogens, is that our common experience of an independent and permanent self is an illusion. Scientific studies are underway, initiated by the late neuroscientist Francesco Varela, that involve measurement of functional brain activity with brain imaging methods in highly trained practitioners during various meditative states. These studies are currently in progress at the Keck Laboratory, University of Madison, Wisconsin, and at the Lina Laboratory in Paris. The Shamatha Project is the most comprehensive study ever conducted on the effects of meditation practice on the brain. In partnership with meditation teacher and Buddhist scholar Alan Wallace, and a team of over 30 investigators and consulting scientists, the Shamatha Project is exploring how 3 months of intensive training in the practice of meditation affects behavior, physiology, and emotion regulation. Neuroscientists and Buddhists have been in dialogue now for decades, and many very impressive studies have been done, and many more are underway. A discipline called contemplative science has resulted. The hot topic for neuroscience in this interaction with Buddhism is neuroplasticity, going beyond the ability of the brain to change by expanding or strengthening circuits that are used, and by shrinking or weakening those that are not, to how mental events and even particular waves of thought can alter the physical matter of the brain. Early studies, as described by Matthew Ricard, a Buddhist monk in Kathmandu, who holds a PhD in genetics, showed unprecedented and dramatic increases in high-frequency brain activity in meditating monks. Ricard reported that the fact the monks with the most hours of meditation showed the greatest beneficial brain changes gives us confidence that the changes are actually produced by mental training. These and other brain imaging observations lend credence to the hypothesis that meditation practice reduces the amount of time to disengage the brain activity associated with self-focus, and that this enhances empathy and compassion. There is reason to believe that a more empathetic and compassionate brain is a healthier and happier brain. Scientific studies of empathy and compassion and of Buddhist and other meditation practitioners have dramatically increased. The story of Buddha's life illustrates 3 stages of practice, starting with morality, followed by meditation, and ultimately wisdom. There is certainly a possibility that Siddhartha's preparation for Buddhahood and the practice that resulted involved the use of some psychedelic materials, probably at least cannabis and hashish, possibly psilocybin, which have a history of continuous use by sadhus and other spiritual seekers dedicated to spiritual cultivation in India. The Forest of Bliss, part of a great green patch that reached the border of the important city of Benares, was filled with seekers and religious mendicants who lived in the woods, performed their various rituals and practices, and were supported by Banarsi citizens who left food for them at the edge of the city. Smoking cannabis was an activity shared by many of these spiritual pioneers, and there is a high likelihood that Siddhartha spent some considerable time in the Forest of Bliss before his enlightenment in Bodh Gaya. Little kenshos, or awakenings, provided by psychedelics can help bring us an important insight also discovered by Buddhists in deep meditative states. Consensual reality is socially constructed. The scientific community is now beginning to focus on the benefits of psychedelic medicines as well. Walter Pahnke conducted a study in 1962 for Harvard known as the Good Friday experiment, wherein 10 theological students were given psilocybin and 10 a placebo. 9 out of 10 of the students given psilocybin reported religious or mystical experiences, and a follow-up with these students reported that the value has persisted. According to writer Thomas Roberts, it is remarkable, possibly unique in the social sciences, that it documents the effects of a treatment given once and persisting a quarter of a century later, and perhaps getting even stronger. This speaks to the power of psychedelics as experimental treatments, wrote Roberts. Following up on the Good Friday experiment, this year, Johns Hopkins researchers have noted in the Journal of Psychopharmacology that most of the 36 volunteer subjects given psilocybin under controlled conditions in a Hopkins study published in 2006 continued to say 14 months later that the experience increased their sense of well-being or life satisfaction. This caught the attention of the New York Times, which published a widely circulated article in April of this year called "Hallucinogens Have Doctors Tuning In Again." Recent studies have indicated that beneficially reframing death anxiety can occur with psilocybin, and that MDMA-assisted psychotherapy can reduce post-traumatic stress disorder in patients who have been intractable to other treatments. Other clinical trials suggest that psychedelics can be very helpful with obsessive-compulsive disorder, neurosis and psychosis, depression, alcoholism, and addiction. MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, is working on a protocol that would investigate the use of psychedelics in the midst of a 7 to 10-day meditation retreat. This study would be conducted with Dr. Franz Vollenweider, professor of psychiatry in the School of Medicine, University of Zurich, and a director at the Hefter Institute. Finally, the question of how Buddhism and psychedelics relate is not easily answered. Science may prove to be the mediating field within which they meet with clarity and transparency going into the future. Thank you.